So the best thing to do, change before you're forced to change. So how do you do it? Well, first of all, you have to identify, why do you resist change? Why is it that you resist change? So let me give you just some reasons over the course of my ministry and working with people. First of all, I think people resist change because life is comfortable the way it is. They have sort of a status quo mentality. They think, it's not great, but it could be worse. So they live in sort of average mediocrity, and it's okay, and it's not okay. But that's one of the reasons why. Another one is, well, if I attempted to change, Pastor Rick, I might fail. And I don't want to be a failure. I fear failure so much that I don't want to try to do something, because if I can't do it, then it'll be worse than having never tried in the first place. A third reason why, over the years I've heard people say this, is either my friends, my family, whoever, the people close to me might not like it. In other words, change will be almost a threat. I'll become different, and my different way of being or acting will then cause uncomfortableness between the people that I'm presently close with. A fourth reason is, it's just too hard to change. It's just too hard, Pastor Ray. I've tried it, and it's difficult. And it's just too difficult and too hard, so I'm just going to stay the way I am. And then I've heard this one. I don't know what might happen if I change. What would that look like? The future is unclear to me, and so because I'm not sure what my changed life would look like, I'll stay the way I am, because changing requires faith and trust, and I don't want to get involved in those kinds of things. Any of those ring true for you? My guess is they do, since many of them came from you, as I've heard them over the years. What's your issue that's keeping you from changing in your life? All of those issues, by the way, are not good reasons. They're not reasons that line up with God's best for your life. Many of them, frankly, are in direct opposition to principles like faith, trusting God, go against principles like obedience that we're taught. Many of the strong basic principles that should guide your life go in direct opposition with those kinds of beliefs, but people resist it. I read a story one time, a book about Henry Ford, the man and the machine, and I want to share a story with you. I don't know if you know this story. It's a remarkable story, and it has to do with a guy named William Knudsen, who was one of Henry Ford's engineers. And Henry Ford had gone to Europe. And while he was in Europe, and you can appreciate back in the early 1900s, you don't hop on a plane. It's a long journey. You're going to be gone for a while. While Henry Ford was gone, Knudsen was working on sort of a new Model T, the new version, if you would. And that new version was different than the original Model T. It was a version that had a kind of a more low-slung kind of look. It had an open top. It had a number of differences. And I want to just read this quote to you. This is what happened when Ford came back from Europe and saw for the first time the new Model T. Ford had his hands in his pockets, and he walked around the car 3 or 4 times. It was a 4-door. The top was down. Finally, he got to the left-hand side of the car. He took his hands out of his pockets. He grabbed a hold of the door, and he ripped the door right off. How the man done it, I don't know. He jumped in and grabbed the other door, ripped that door off. He started pounding on the windshield. He jumped to the back seat. He started ripping at the upholstery. He took his shoe off and beat it until the heel of his shoe fell off. He wrecked the car as much as he physically could wreck it. Now there's someone who's resisting change. Wow. Some of you hear a story like that and you think, my goodness, that's incredible. And yet, in your own way, you are reacting the same way to change. You just resist it with everything inside of you. And what God is saying to you today is change your ways. Change your ways. Change before you're forced to change.